As pumpkin tits lurches through the final day of a squad and see Republicans are just beginning to survey the wreckage of his reign. Their party has been gutted, their leader is reviled, and after 4 years of excusing every squadral front to conservatard values, their credibility is shot. How will the Republicans cover from the complicity and corruption of the pumpkin tit era? And too many Republicans, the answer is simple: pretend that it never happened. We're about to see a whole political party do a large-scale version of New Phone Who Dis, says Sarah Isker, a former top spokesperson for the Pumpkin Tit Justice Department. It'll be like that boyfriend you should never have dated, and the mistake that shall not be mentioned. Um, the plan might seem implausible, but I've heard it floated repeatedly in recent days by Republican strategists who are counting down the minutes of the Pumpkin Tit Squad and the hardcore maggots, the hardcore maggot crowd that will stay loyal, of course, and those few who have consistently opposed pumpkin tits will escape with their reputations intact. But for the majority of the Republican officials and commentators who sacrificed their dignity at the altar of pumpkin tits, a collective case of amnesia seems destined to set in the moment he leaves office. Basically, people who spent years coddling the squatter will recast themselves as voices of conscience, which they weren't. Or they will whitewash their relationship with pumpkin tits altogether. Policymakers who abandoned their dedication to fiscal responsibility and limited government will rediscover a passion for this timeless conservative principles. Some may dress up in their revisionism in the rhetoric of healing and moving forward, but the strategy will be clear, and to escape accountability by taking advantage of America's notoriously short political memory. When Doug Hare was asked, he's a longtime Republican strategist, how his party will remember the pumpkin tit years, he responded with a litany of episodes to memory hole. Republicans will want to forget the constant chaos, the lies, the double dealing, the hiring of family, and the escalating rhetoric that incited the hate for 4 years and directly led to what happened at the Capitol. Basically, any of those things that we never would have let Obama or Clinton get away with, but constantly justified to ourselves in the name of the judges. But while some Republicans might be eager to walk away from pumpkin tits, Hay added, many will continue to talk about the things in the administration that they supported, from tax cuts and deregulation to flooding the judiciary with conservatards. And indeed, the narrative now forming in some Republican circles presents Pumpkin Tits as a secondary figure who presided over an array of important accomplishments thanks to the wisdom and guidance of the Republicans and observed he didn't have any accomplishments. But in these accounts, Pumpkin Tits' race baiting, corruption, and cruel immigration policies, and not to mention his attempts to overturn an election, are treated as minor subplots rather than defining futures. Alyssa Farah, who worked for more than 3 years in the Pumpkin Tit White House as a communication advisor, had resigned last month after the squatter refused to concede the election. She spent the past couple of weeks condemning Pumpkin Tits' conspiracy theories and distancing herself from the havoc that he wrought. And still, when she was spoken to, Farah was eager to highlight America's booming pre-coronavirus economy as proof of concept for traditional conservative policy. She basically lamented that Pumpkin Tits' legacy might be defined by the final days of it, that is the violent insurrection he incited and the reimpeachment it provoked. But she said that Republicans shouldn't throw the baby out of the bathwater. That's an old saying. Hoping to provoke a slightly more introspective assessment of the squatter she served, people asked Farah how she thought that the Pumpkin Tit era would be written about in history books. After thinking for a moment, she suggested that this period might not be remembered for pumpkin tits at all, but rather for the once-in-a-100-year pandemic that happened to occur on his watch. Other pumpkin tit allies hoping to reclaim the mantle of respectable Republican might choose to follow the Lindsey Graham model. The senator's turn from truth-telling pumpkin tit critic to loyal acolyte had timed for his re-election bid last year in South Carolina earned him a rash of savage headlines in the political press, but he's already begun his post-pumpkin tit rebrand, starting with speech on the Senate floor after the Capitol riot earlier that month. Pumpkin tits, and I, which meaning Graham, he says we had a hell of a journey. This is what Graham said in the characteristically cheerful drawl that scans so many inside the Beltway as candor. I hate it to end this way, but oh god, fucking, I hate it. From my point of view, he's been a consequential squatter. But today, all I can say is count me out, enough is enough, and I've tried to help. Yeah, the only help you gave him was lying. Graham's implication was that he cozied up to Pumpkin Tits only to advise him on issues of grave national import, and that he was now breaking with the outgoing Scotter on moral grounds, and this version of events conveniently ignores the senator's hyper-partisan defenses of Pumpkin Tits, so he called the first impeachment a lynching in every sense, or his sycophantic inbreed, his sycophantic, like, I'm sucking up, he beat me like a dog in 2016, or any number of dignity-sapping acrobatics he performed to stay on the Squatter's good side. By deciding to denounce Pumpkin Tits after the riot, Graham, like many of his colleagues, could try to claim that he put country before party, even if it wasn't until the final days of Pumpkin Tits' term. Terry Sullivan, who ran Marco Rubio's presidential campaign in 2016, had said that he was unimpressed by the sudden rush to righteous indignation. The newfound outrage from former Pumpkin Tit inbred sycophants rings a bit hollow, given how quiet most were during Charlottesville and countless other escapades. 47 months of blind loyalty followed by 1 month of conscience doesn't earn you much more than the McElwainey profile and a courage award. Sullivan was less certain, and though about whether the revisionism would work, I don't expect the voters will treat them any more kindly than the historians. But we've been wrong before, and after all, some predicted that the Republicans who worked for George W. Bush, especially the architects of the Iraq War, would be shunned once he left office. Instead, many of them have settled to respectable and lucrative perches as commentators, lobbyists, and elder statesmen. As long as the cable news bookers keep calling, redemption is always available. Like many of the more high-profile figures who had worked for Pumpkin Tits administration, like Isker, the former Justice Department spokesperson, has spent the years since she resigned publicly repenting. She regularly criticizes the Squatter on CNN and in the Dispatch, a publication that's founded by number Pumpkin Tit conservators. And last month she published an essay in the Washington Post grappling with how she and her colleagues had obscured the reality of a Pumpkin Tit squadron from the public. But Isker also recognizes that these avenues aren't available to every Republican tainted by the Pumpkin Tit era. Indeed, those with the least power may end up being the ones who find it hardest to recover. Think about all those 22-year-old kids who took a very junior job for very little money to answer phones in the White House press shop, Isker said. They leave with that on their resume, but without the ability to explain themselves, they don't get to write an op-ed in the Washington Post or go on cable news every day to stake out new territory. She added that it's yet to be seen where those folks land.